Papa Schro, DEJ here for another Wrestling with Kayfabe. This time we're going back to a couple different things that maybe tug at Papa Schro and I's heartstrings a little bit, and maybe we talk about some sentimental things, but also, as you know, we always talk about the current product and what's going on, not only in WWE, but AEW as well. First of all, Papa Schro, how are you on this bitterly cold change of weather in Kansas City?
Pretty good. I can't complain too much. The weather has definitely changed very rapidly, but rolling with the punches.
Yeah, that's typically how we do it over here. So, I mean,
Yes,
let's just
sir.
dive into it. Um, let's start with, let's see, what should we start with? Let's start with this. CM Punk loses his job in AEW, but now there was a rumor that he didn't lose his job. But now there's another rumor that says he did lose his job, and then he goes back to his fighting commentary with his fighting contract. I can't remember what company it is, but it's affiliated with UFC. So now he's commentating cage fighting again. He did not talk about wrestling. He did that the other night. And he did not talk about any form of wrestling return whatsoever. So, I mean, really, where are we at right now with CM Punk? Do you feel like this is kind of the end of him being a wrestler again? Or do you think he's just kind of working both companies? Because there is a lot of speculation that Triple H would like to have him back as a form of something at some point.
I think it's super interesting. I think it's the end of CM Punk. Honestly, I just don't know where he fits in anywhere. I think maybe if Triple H goes out and does end up working with him again, I think it'll be a lot different. Obviously, Triple H's in ring days are over, long gone. No, probably no one offs from what we understand right now. So I think he's fully in promotion and that's it. So I don't know. I mean, I think maybe they could possibly bridge that gap, but I bury the hatchet, with them too, because Triple H was a big part of the reason, you know, along with Vince, but a big part of the reason that Punk wanted to be gone in the first place. And I just that whole AEW situation at the end just got so out of control and so crazy with that press conference he did after. I can't remember what pay per view that was, but
All out, I believe.
all out. Okay. Nevertheless, it's just with CM Punk. I just don't. Obviously, he's not going back to AEW, and I just think WWE is. You can never say never in wrestling. I feel that's been proven time and time again. Guys like the Ultimate Warrior, Bret Hart, all coming back to WWE at some point. But I don't know if we ever see it while he's capable of still putting on a match.
I agree, and you brought up the Ultimate Warrior and Bret Hart. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think here that a lot of people viewed Ultimate Warrior and Bret Hart as two of the best wrestlers of all time, and I don't think people view CM Punk that way anymore. Do you feel that way?
No, not really. After his last AEW stint, I don't know. I think there's definitely an argument for, he is one of the best wrestlers of this generation. Kind of this past generation, the last 10, 15 years, I think. But I don't know. I don't know if he's like really viewed that way. Just also just how bitterly, how it's ended where he's worked with WWE and AEW. I think put all that aside, and you could put him up there. And he's a great worker. He's a great talker. Can get a ton of heat. He's a guy that can excel, but I also kind of feel like the fans are kind of done with him too. So I think that really hurts him in a big way because if you don't have support behind you from the crowd, I mean that's what the comeback with AEW was so special and so big because we were dying to see CM Punk again. It'd been how many ever years, 6, 7 years, something like that. Um,
7 feet at least, yeah.
yeah. So, with that anticipation, the fact that you look at the same thing with Bray Wyatt, recently, that type of anticipation, we all knew what was coming, and it was still, it was just that big because of how much the fans wanted it and anticipated it. And I think now it's kind of hard to get that for CM Punk.
No, I think you nailed it on the head. I think it's mainly a lot of people just being tired of CM Punk, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just kind of seems to be a pattern when you get these older guys who, maybe lose their way in their career, mostly because of their overall behavior. Maybe outside of the example of Shawn Michaels, you just kind of lose yourself, and then you kind of go back to your old ways. I mean, Ultimate Warrior, CM Punk, let me correct that. Out of Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton, there really aren't a lot of other guys who have returned. And Orton did return because, I mean, he did have those injuries. And there aren't really a lot of guys who have turned it around and made an attitude adjustment to where they were more than welcomed back to the company, to where, I mean, we can go on Randy Orton stories for an hour and a half, but, considering that Randy Orton has made a fan out of, I know he's a big fan of yours, but, out of me as well for the past couple of years, you kind of forget, who Randy Orton was. And with Randy, it just kind of felt like an age thing more than anything, because, he was the youngest World Heavyweight Champion ever at the time. He was pushed into this role with arguably one of the three best wrestlers of all time in Triple H, and one of the best of all time, Ric Flair. I mean, that is a lot for someone to be pushed into at such a young age, and he wasn't even 24, then he was younger than that. So, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody and expect them to act, mature. That's tough. That's a tough role to be put in. But how he is now, and still one of the best damn wrestlers in the world, at age 42, 43, however old he is, that says a lot to him and just his character change. You don't see that with CM Punk. He looks older. He looks like he doesn't give a shit. And he
That
still
press
has
conference, I think,
gratitude.
said everything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you were just hoping. Well, maybe he's right. Maybe it was Vince McMahon. Maybe it was WWE.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that way. We talked about this on the last episode. It just doesn't look that way anymore. It's sad because CM Punk was such a big influence for a lot of people, but at at some point, you got to look yourself in the mirror and go, oh, maybe it is me. You know what I mean? It's sad but true.
Yeah, it definitely shocked me. I feel like to a point with the whole AEW unraveling, because you're absolutely right. Um, it's definitely a thing where maybe it's definitely probably him at this point. From the outside looking in, I mean, we can't be in those situations or know exactly what's going on behind closed doors. But at the end of the day, from the outside looking in, it absolutely looks like CM Punk is the problem. And that does suck because just like you're saying, it's so influential for so many people. And CM Punk's one of those guys that was really in the last how many ever years has really just sparked that kind of like that childhood like excitement for wrestling. Two guys that we've been talking about a lot lately, Bray Wyatt and CM Punk, are two of those guys for me. um, Brian Danielson, however you want to refer to him as, um, all kind of in there, and Roman Reigns with this last run that he's been having. But go back kind of to the point, just CM Punk, it's a big letdown for the fans, and I think that's where like the fatigue comes in big time for the fans after wanting that for so long and it to end like this. And I mean, I think he said it best at his press conference, kind of what you were touching on, is just he said, what exactly did he say? He said, I'm old. I work around children. You would think that he would get older and kind of grow into that, I don't know, mentor ish role, or a different I don't know how to say exactly, but you know, a different role he would get. You know, like when you talk about Randy Orton, how the maturity level that went up, and it doesn't seem like, you know, we all thought all along kind of WWE screwed him in the long run and kind of, you know, messed him around on some storylines and just wasn't as good as it could have been. And you know, maybe there was a lot more to that than what we realized after, you know, seeing this situation with AEW.
Well, I think there's a lot to everything ever since Vince McMahon left, and I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of people haven't realized is Vince McMahon leaving. One is the biggest story in wrestling history. You know, I mean, if you like him or not, and I understand all the allegations against him, so I'm not supporting him in those in any way, shape, or form. But him leaving is the biggest thing in wrestling history. You know, point blank period. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, Vince McMahon is why you watched wrestling for so many years. You know, and now he's gone. But now you have this changing of the guard, and now you kind of see the things that maybe Vince McMahon covered up that, you know, Triple H or Paul Levesque, we'll call him Paul Levesque for the professional term, kind of didn't want to cover up anymore. You know, so you kind of see those things that Vince maybe hid because he didn't like, you know, or felt strongly about somebody or whatever. But Paul, you know, is kind of like, you know, I don't really like this person, or, you know, I don't really care for how you did that. So I'm just going to let it burn, you know, and he's done that multiple times. I mean, hell, we just brought back Sarah Logan, you know, I mean,
Yeah, I thought
talk
that was
about,
awesome.
you know, I mean, you know, and, you know, not that Sarah Logan was a big time force in the women's division, but, you know, she was a good, you know, a part of a faction. They just released her just because they could, you know, and to bring back somebody like Sarah Logan, that just shows that, you know, he is willing to bring back anybody that wants another chance, you know, and is willing to fall within the WWE guidelines. Because let's be clear, he does want people to fall in the WWE guidelines. I mean, well, let's be honest
Yeah.
here, but he is much more flexible than Vince McMahon ever was at letting them be a more creative WWE talent.
I think Triple H or Paul Levesque, like you said, at this point is essentially Vince, but Vince 20, 30 years ago. You know, because Vince wasn't always, you know, like this, set in his ways of, you know, especially like, you know, kind of sharing talent and, you know, just willing to do a lot more. Um, you know, not really, I don't know. He kind of was always, you know, if you get he well, I guess not. I feel like it's almost like Vince McMahon in the 90s because Vince McMahon kind of let everybody do what they wanted to do. You know, they moved into this, you know, becoming a insanely huge company and being publicly traded, and you know, they had to do all these things. They had to get the F out. They had to, you know, you know what I mean? They just had to do all this different stuff, and I think Triple H brings a fresh mind that's a lot closer to the product, you know, on screen than, you know, because he was just wrestling, you know, a year or two ago. You know, I mean, he was part time, but at the same time, you know, he still had his hand on the, you know, pulse, so to speak.
Yeah, he did, and I mean that's an interesting point. You know, talking about him maybe being Vince, you know, when he was a little bit younger. I mean, you know, Vince was still old and, you know,
Right.
older, you know, when he was doing it 20, 30 years ago. But, you know, he had a different perspective of it. And, you know, when we're talking about late 90s, early 2000s, and like you said, with Get the F Out and stuff like that, and the lawsuit between WWF and the, you know, Wild
World
World
Wildlife
Wide.
Foundation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of different, you know, aspects of that that really did change the landscape of wrestling. But you know, it's just very clear that, you know, Paul or Triple H, whatever you want to call him, has, you know, taken this business by the horns, you know, and put a lot of pressure on AEW. You know, AEW has a title defense every night on their show. So I don't know if people notice that, but they do. Why do they do that? Because they need views, because they know that Triple H is going to put on a show that he doesn't have to defend the title every week, and he doesn't even have to have Roman Reigns on the damn show.
Yeah.
Because there's enough talent on that roster, both Raw and SmackDown, to carry a show without Roman Reigns, who is probably the best wrestler in the world right now, period. So
Yeah.
if you don't have to have the best wrestler in the world on your shows, AEW is going to have to pull out every single thing, and defend the title every week, even if John Moxley, who is, one of the best wrestlers in the world. But, you're putting him on TV every week, and Roman Reigns, you don't even have to show up for 2 weeks. So there's a big gap there that, Tony Khan realizes, and he's going to have to figure it out, and I, was watching a little bit of Rampage last night, and Orange Cassidy was defending the, I don't even know what they call it, North Atlantic Championship or something like that. And it was a good match. Orange Cassidy is a good wrestler, but you to me, and I know this is probably going to rub people the wrong way, I can't buy into Orange Cassidy. It's just a weird character to me. And not that I don't like the cool guy character. That's fine, but it seems too overdone. And I get it. I get the hands in the pocket. It's a cool gimmick, but it's not. And I'm not saying I was a fan of Dude Love, because that was a dumb character. Even Mick Foley says he hated the character, but he had to do it. So I'm not saying that part of the spectrum either. But I don't get it. Maybe that's me being a dumb wrestling fan, I guess. But to me, I don't get it. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I'm not a fan either.
Yeah, I don't get it. And and not that he's not a great wrestler, he is, but at some point you kind of have to look at your roster if you're AEW and go, okay, who do we have? That's our guy. We've talked about this several times. You're going into that area where all these guys that you have were from the other show.
Yeah. It's WCW all over again right now.
Yeah, exactly. You have John Moxley, who's your world champion. You have Bryan Danielson, who's a part of your main faction. You have William Regal, who's cutting promos with MJF. You have all these guys. You have, Neville or, Pac or whatever he is now, who's the main guy in the trios, division. So you have all these people, and you have Paige, who's got flung into the main, women's battle. So you have all these former WWE people, and I know they're talented wrestlers. I know that probably rubs people the wrong way when you say, oh, you have all these former WWE people. Well, yeah, they're some of the best wrestlers in the world, but that's a problem, because you're running into the issue where, okay, we have Britt Baker, we have Hangman Adam Page, and our biggest star is MJF. And then we have a couple of, mid-level guys. But those are your products, and that's it. So you kind of got to figure out how to create more stars. I know Jade Cargill is a pretty good wrestler, and she's a powerhouse, but you just don't have it. So what do? And there, I've said it before. After when Bray Wyatt came back, I said AEW was in trouble. And I believe it. I think they are. And I know you said they'll find a way out of it, but how are you feeling after watching the next couple of weeks and I guess a month now? How are you feeling with all that now that everything's changed?
Honestly, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a huge problem, and I think it's been, blown up with Bray Wyatt coming back. Roman Reigns is doing his thing, as you said. He doesn't have to be on the show every week, to make a difference still. And the whole faction of, having Sami Zayn in the mix, the Usos, and having, oh man, I'm so mad that his name's slipping my mind, Fatu.
Solo Sikoa, or whatever his name is. Solo something.
Gotcha. Okay. So
yeah.
just that whole faction, the bloodline, and Paul Heyman with them. But yeah, just like you were saying, you are looking at a roster that is built off of guys that came over from the other side. It's just like when Kevin Nash said, how big that was of a statement, really when him and Scott Hall thought about it, because You know, at the end of the day, two guys from that other locker room were fending off the entire WCW locker room. And obviously, it's not at that point, but it does kind of take me back to, you know, when you first messaged me that poster from AEW and said there's a lot of WWE guys on here. And, you know, I didn't really think too much of it at the time.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, now being, I mean, I think that was damn near a year ago. And
Pretty much.
yeah, so, but now going through time and, you know, seeing all of it, how it's shaped out, you know, yeah, there's a big problem. They've got to be able to create somebody organically. And, you know, like you're talking about Orange Cassidy, you know, there's some gimmicks on the show that I'm not just, you know, too fond of. And, you know, I think that they kind of started in that kind of honeymoon phase with wrestling fans. A lot of wrestling fans wanted to get on board. And I was definitely one of them. I mean, I've never been slight to either or product. I mean, WWE was not putting up what we wanted to see at the time and hadn't for, you know, it seemed like a few years. And, you know, to see AEW come around, and for me, being a kid that grew up watching WCW, bringing in Tony Schiavone, and, you know, being able to kind of pull out all the stops with Sting coming back, the fact it was on TNT, you know, it was all just like, you know, brought back that nostalgia of, oh shit, wrestling on TNT, on, you know, good pro wrestling. And, you know, it's just it's almost like it's kind of a sour taste in your mouth at this point of just like, you're just kind of looking over, you know, I feel like I just kind of pay attention to AEW, like, what are you guys going to do? You know, are you guys going to, you know, ascend? Or are you guys going to kind of pedal around where you're at? Because I don't necessarily think that AEW is going to go out of business anytime soon. And I don't think that it's going to follow the trajectory WCW did. But I'm definitely feeling a lot differently about AEW, just in general, you know, of being kind of this A show of the B shows, if that makes sense. You know, your Impacts, your, you know, what they bought Ring of Honor. So, I mean, they are Ring of Honor in AEW, which I think is cool. I'm blanking on any other promotions out there right now. But, you know, just, it's a place to go to, you know, build stock, help yourself, you know, to get back to WWE, maybe what it may shape out to be. So I think we're kind of still in a tentative place where we're still kind of going to, you know, figuring it out, because they still have a shot to be, you know, up there with WWE. You know, you've got Kenny Omega, you know, you said John Moxley as well. Bryan Danielson is there. You've got a lot of good talent, but yeah, you have to create something organically. I don't know who it is. I mean, MJF is one of the most over guys in the business right now, so that's definitely something to build on, but you need a little bit more to build on top of that. And you have to also treat the MJF situation very delicately, because you cannot let that blow up. You know, he can't be your Goldberg. It would be the best way I feel like I could put that. And, you know, capitalize on the heat, and then, you know, pay that man whatever the hell he wants to be paid when it comes to his contract.
Well, that's the thing too. You know, I mean, I know the Khan family has an endless well of money. You know, but, you know, is an endless well of money going to keep him from going, you know, somewhere he's always wanted to go?
Right.
You know, and that promo he cut with William Regal was one of the best promos I've ever seen in my life. You know, and I'm, you know, I know that sounds like, you know, Markish, you know, comment, but it's easily one of the best promos you'll ever hear. You know, it was just so damn good. And and the thing people don't really understand about William Regal is William Regal doesn't have to say much.
Yeah.
He just has to say 10, 15 words, you know, because he's so good at body language, and he's so good at understanding in the moment. You know, and William Regal, you know, doing the smug looks, and for listening to MJF, but not really listening. You know, he just kind of sold it on his own, and that was perfect for MJF and William Regal.
Storytelling.
What's that?
Storytelling.
Storytelling.
It's what wrestling is.
Exactly, and I think that's what AEW is missing.
Yeah.
You know, everyone talks about, oh, well, their in-ring storytelling is much better than WWE. And it kind of is. You know, I'll give them that. I think it is. But the overall stories just aren't there. You know, I mean, you had Bray Wyatt coming back. You had, all these different guys that are coming back. I mean, hell, even the OC's back, with AJ Styles.
Yeah.
So you have all these different people that come back. So if you can tell a story, tell a story in the ring, and is AEW better at in-ring storytelling? I think they are. But, at the end of the day, I'm more interested in, where is this going to go? I'm way more interested to find out where Sami Zayn and the Bloodline's going to go, other than, John Moxley, trying to win a title match every, you know, Tuesday night or whatever it is. So I'm way more interested in that, than seeing John Moxley defend his title for the ninth time in the past 8 weeks. So it's just one of those things. Will AEW figure it out? They might. They could figure it out and go on a run and continue the success that they've had. But I will say this, and we're actually going to talk about some of our maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5, the top Heat guys of all time. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Chris Jericho is hurting AEW a lot.
Ooh, I don't think that that's a terrible take. I mean, I think that he's been, I don't know. Yeah, he's been on this weird wave, weird, just ride in general with AEW to me, because it did start out so hot. He was coming off of his, you know, matches in Japan, and everything started off so hot with him in AEW, and kind of felt like he was going to be one of the top guys in the company. Which I mean, it's Jericho. I mean, he can be a top guy for sure, but yeah, the way that it's went, and the rivalry with MJF that they had. I know I'm reaching back a little ways, but I feel like there was a lot of pointless kind of losses put on MJF through that, and that was, I don't know, that was tough. MJF obviously rose above, out of that, and became the star he is right now. But I'd absolutely agree with you. Jericho's not necessarily doing AEW any favors. He's really stuck on this wanting to be a leader of a faction.
Well, correct, and the fact that he beat Cesaro or Claudio, whatever his name is now, for the
Mhm.
ROH championship. I mean, did you really need the ROH championship? I mean, it's I don't know. I don't really understand it. It's kind of it's funny because I know him and Triple H have never gotten along at times. It's very Triple H-ish. It's
Ooh.
very early 2000s, late 90s Triple H-ish.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Winning all the time, not losing very much, has a faction, needs a faction, and just being a heel, but you're not losing. So what's the point of you, coming out every week and acting like you might lose when you're not going to?
Right.
It's very Triple H-ish, back in the day, and even towards the middle of his end career, it was just kind of that way. And I know they didn't really get along, so I don't know. I don't know why he's trying to emulate that, but who knows? There's a lot of different things that'll come into play over the next month or two. But I wanted to ask you, speaking of things that have kind of developing over the last month, how are you feeling about the Bray Wyatt story? Now we're kind of getting into, I know we've met Uncle Howdy a couple of times, which, people aren't really sure if it's Bo Dallas or it's just another version of Bray Wyatt. Um, but we're seeing the logo flash up behind people during interviews or during entrances. You're kind of doing the Bray Wyatt creeping into the faction being teased. Things starting to come together. Things like that. How are you feeling it's developing? Some people really like it, and some people feel like it's too slow. But if you're a Bray Wyatt fan, you got to know that slow is the name of the game
Yeah.
for storytelling for him. Just overall, how are you feeling about how he's executing? Because we all know that the contract was basically signed, and WWE's hands off of it at this point. It's all his creation, from what is being told.
Yeah, I think so far so good. I really like what they're doing. I like the fact that it's going slow. Like you said, it's kind of the name of the game with Bray, obviously, but with the way the Fiend was rushed to the top. I was actually just watching. I can't remember what YouTube channel I was watching, but I was just watching a little thing on some of his I can't remember if it was worst moments or worst moments from gimmicks, something like that. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were just going into detail about how that character was pushed up to the top of the card, and when you start at the top of the card, there's only one place to go, and it's down. And the way that they moved with the Fiend character in general just was atrocious from the jump, really. And the fact that they're letting this just breathe and letting it go, I mean, it's the best way to do it. And it goes back to, at the end of the day, at one point in time, WWE was the just by far the best at long term storytelling. And I think if they can build something, and the fact he's starting with LA Knight is good to me. Let him kind of start at a certain level, work his way up, and figure it out from there. And I think that they could go to the moon with the this current iteration of Bray Wyatt. And we still have a lot to find out about this iteration of Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know if question marks is the right word, but a lot of curiosities as to what Bray Wyatt is going to be. I read different comments on LA Knight potentially being the first true rivalry, I guess you could say. And everyone was pretty excited about it because of both their promo abilities.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of excitement just, for not even really a match per se, but just the overall talking aspect of it. And that was a big thing. Our guy Baron Corbin, when he got the Money in the bank briefcase, he was put up against John Cena. I mean, was Baron Corbin really gonna talk on the microphone at that point of his career against John Cena? No.
Right.
So it was just kind of a kind of a middle finger to Baron Corbin at that time. But
Well, he did something on Twitter to, I think, a veteran or somebody, member
uh
of the army or something like that. That was his punishment, essentially, I think.
uh Yeah, you're right. That's right. That's right. I remember that.
Speaking of which, just to detour real quick, but what do you think about the Austin Theory cash in? One, the fact that it was on the United States Championship, I thought that was interesting. And two, the fact that he was unable to cash in. And if I'm not mistaken, he's only the second person that hasn't won the belt, as him and Baron Corbin. Am I wrong?
Four.
Oh, there's four.
Because it was Cena, Sandow, Corbin, and now Theory.
Oh, I forgot about Sandow. Yeah.
Um, which thank goodness for that. But
Yeah.
Was Austin Theory going to beat Roman Reigns?
I think if Vince McMahon's still in charge, yeah. I think at some point he could, Seth Rollins-esque, take the belt.
Correct. But would you ever believe that?
No, not at all.
You could believe Seth Rollins would beat
Yes.
Roman Reigns at some point. But Austin Theory beating Roman Reigns in a match, you never believed.
Yeah.
So. And when he teased the cash in, it's kind of like, okay, well, obviously something's going to happen to where you're not going to do it. So I think that's a big reset by Triple H, and I think
Agreed.
it's a good reset because now he can, feud against whoever. And I think it looks like it's going to be Seth Rollins. I think they can both put on a good match. I think Austin Theory is very athletic. And Seth, I think they both match up really well, stylistically or whatever you want to call it. So I think they can bring in a lot of good matches. There was at one time where it looked like it was going to be Austin Theory, Kevin Owens. That's another alley. I think they have yet to explore that. I think they could. So I think the Austin Theory stock is still high, but it's a different type. And I think Triple H knows that you kind of got him. He has to win matches first. For people to believe that he's that kind of guy, and it's kind of like the Randy Orton effect. When Randy Orton first came into the business, you didn't, he had that stupid entrance music. He had the blue shorts. You didn't really think this guy, third generation superstar, was the 14-time world champion and arguably one of the 5 best wrestlers to ever step in a ring. You just didn't believe it. So I think it's just a time, and he's young. He's a year younger than I am. So I mean, he's got all the time in the world to be, a big star. So I think if anyone is able to handle an Austin Theory reboot, it's Triple H. There's nobody else you want in your hands than Triple H. For the Austin Theory character.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because from the beginning of just the way Vince was pushing him, just to me was not, I don't know. I just didn't believe in Theory at all from the beginning, and I think you're right. He could give him a good reset. The biggest thing I think to me that stood out was the moment it happened. I was actually watching live when it happened, and I was shocked. I was like, wow, like they're doing a really good job at making this title, the United States title, feel very meaningful. And I think going back to that open challenge, kind of what Cena did, so many years ago for that belt, it meant a lot at that time. And I think Triple H is kind of going back to that number, or whoever's idea it was. But I do think that and the Intercontinental belt are two of the most prestigious belts of all time in wrestling. And, the fact of how they were treated the last, 15 years or so, tossing them around and, not meaning, what they meant to at some point, all those years ago. But I think it's awesome to see, and again, like I said earlier, a kid that grew up watching WCW, that's always a belt that I always held in high regard, even, though they had the goofy looking, very vibrantly colored United States title. I didn't hate it, but, it wasn't the same as WCW's version. And this version, I really like with the eagle on it in the front, and, still got a little bit of color to it, but I think that's huge though, because Triple H also understands what those belts mean. And at the end of the day, they always say the wrestler makes the belt, and that's the truth. I think absolutely, but at the same time, that also doesn't mean that we can just hand these belts out to everybody and toss them around week to week. And you have to treat them like it's a title, and it's a big deal. I think the top four belts are obviously a huge deal: the Universal title, the WWE title, and the U.S. and Intercontinental title. I think Triple H definitely understands that, and I think we'll be better at protecting the belts than Vince was, which leads me to another question. I know we're kind of getting off on a tangent, kind of detouring, but you think they'll split the belts back up after Roman Reigns' run?
I think so. You have enough talent now to where you can. I think once we get out of War Games, I think we'll see more of a brand split, and more of a brand split battle. I think we're heading that way. I don't know who Roman's opponent will be at WrestleMania. There's three different options they can go with. They can go with Bray Wyatt, Cody Rhodes, or The Rock. I don't really want to see The Rock because it's just I get it, the heritage, the family, and all that, but just tell me Roman Reigns is going to beat The Rock at WrestleMania and we'll move on. So give me someone who will beat him one and make the company better. Um, so I would hope it's Cody Rhodes or Bray Wyatt. Um, I'm leaning towards Cody Rhodes.
Agreed.
I think that would be huge. He's going to get a huge pop when he comes back. And I think it'd be interesting though if he gets a big pop and turns heel. Because now Seth Rollins is a face. So you can't really make Cody Rhodes a face. So I think Triple H is an interesting spot with Cody Rhodes' return. Do you make him a face again? Or do you get him to turn heel and let Cody Rhodes do what he does best and talk on the microphone, and then force that character? I mean, his Ring of Honor character, Kiss My Ring, was, was perfect. I mean, he understood, I have to make a name for myself, and being a heel is what I can do that with. And he did a really good job with it. So I think we might be in for a Cody Rhodes heel turn when he comes back. What he does with it, who knows? Maybe he feuds with Bray Wyatt when he comes back. That could be a possibility, and that could, make him turn or whatever. But
That is an interesting theory of him
you
going
know,
heel.
right? Because I mean, you can't really have him go against Seth Rollins again and have them both be faces. It's not going to work.
Right.
So I think Triple H knows that, and we don't know for sure if Cody Rhodes is going to come back on Raw. They could put him on SmackDown, and have him be, a foil to Roman Reigns, or a heel against Bray Wyatt. So who really knows? But I think Cody Rhodes coming back is going to put a huge gap again between shows and all that. But I don't know. I hope there's a good story for WrestleMania's main event for Roman, either Bray, Cody, maybe even Drew McIntyre. But I don't. I think that's going to end after War Games. So we'll see about that. Maybe even Sami Zayn. If he gets this big push at the end of the year, and the bloodline turns on him, and Kevin Owens comes to his aid, imagine how big of a pop that would be if Sami Zayn walks away with one of the titles. That's one of the biggest pops of all time.
I've seen that be talked about a little bit online of Sami Zayn. I saw a Photoshop picture the other day of Sami Zayn holding both those belts.
I mean, that would be a huge. That would be a giant momentum buster for WWE.
Talk about a building moment too. I mean, to build
exactly.
Sami Zayn up like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, giving a guy like Sami Zayn your biggest titles, shows a lot to the wrestling world. So that would be huge. We talked about this a little bit ago, or a few days ago, and we were talking about heat and all that. I don't know if we could do 5, but 5 just kind of seems ungenuine. Who would be your 3, best, not just, your team sucks and all this and all that, just the 3 best natural heat guys of all time, or, currently, but at least for the past 15 years.
Okay, we're going just past 15 because the first person that comes to mind is Ric Flair. Personally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hell, we'll just do all time.
Well, I mean, we can go last 15 because I'm fine with that because I was struggling to put
Rick
together
was
in my
still
head.
15 years ago.
I mean, that's true. So I mean, Ric Flair's definitely there. Also, The Rock, because one of the number one things that comes to mind always with The Rock, and I'm thinking heel Rock, is when he was doing the Rock concerts, when he was a heel, the Hollywood Rock, and he cut that promo in Sacramento. On the Kings, and that crowd went ballistic.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was an interesting version of The Rock, because you had all those different promos, like you said, the famous Sacramento song, and he's his making fun of Toronto for him mocking them for cheering that he was in Toronto. He was really good at bringing the Hollywood flair back to his character.
Absolutely.
Who do you feel is the third?
Recency bias wants me to say MJF because of what he's done. I feel like you go a couple of guys if you're kind of going more recent, and I mean maybe even CM Punk up in there. Just some of the heel work that he did in WWE, and especially I think, well, kind of the Jeff Hardy stuff, some of that, and as well as right with I'm trying to think, remember, right at the end, with the Shield and Paul Heyman, and that turned around into something big and getting his revenge on Paul Heyman. But let's see, MJF, I said, obviously. The Miz is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, honestly, from just being, he's just such a great character, and even to kind of tail off of The Miz and just give props where props are due to Seth Rollins, because that run with The Authority and all of that, and turning on the Shield, I mean, I feel like that is one of those moments that, will be talked about forever in the wrestling world, of Seth Rollins turning his back. When plan A doesn't work, I always have a plan B, and pow, hits Roman Reigns right in the back, and the way Dean Ambrose turns and looks at him just in utter shock. That's one of those moments that's just like, man, that was a good, really good moment. And then I think who I'm going. Oh man, I know I feel like I'm just that fucking Homer '90s kid, but going all. Kurt Angle though is another good one I want to just say.
That's tough because Kurt is a very good natural heat guy.
Yes, and when he first came in to WWE, how great his stuff was coming into WWE. Man, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one more honestly, because Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels. I'm gonna say Shawn Michaels because that's who I've been trying to get to this whole time. I'm kind of going down a list of guys, just thinking. But Shawn Michaels, just the the promo he cut in, was it in Montreal or was it Toronto? Not even the promo, but when he came out to Bret Hart's music and just crushed that crowd.
Who's your daddy, Montreal?
Oh my dude, that's just again one of those moments. It's like that hurts. That hurt that crowd. That crowd was upset.
Well, yes. How much of that was Shawn Michaels still being a dick, and how much of that was, him being, a natural heat guy.
Because that was his second run, right?
That was the start of the second run.
Yeah, so he was tapping into that asshole Shawn Michaels of the 90s.
Yeah. All right, so, I was talking about the three. Man, that's so hard. Because there's about 20 that you want to name.
Yeah.
But you really only got. So number one, I think you have to go Triple H, and not because of his recent success. I mean, think about all the stuff he did, with the Authority. You literally hated the Authority. You hated Triple H. You hated everything about them because of how good he was at doing it. And his whole, well, it's not my fault, just things happen, and
B+ player.
all that. Right. And his fakeness of it and everything, and, allegedly giving people chances, but in reality, it was just him getting what he wanted at the end. It was just such a well done job. And and an honorable mention, how good is Stephanie McMahon at pissing people off?
Good.
She was so good at it. I'm not going to put her in the three, but the rivalry with the Bellas, with Nikki and Brie, and just she's damn good at it too, but not good enough to be in the three. Number two, it's hard not to go Randy Orton there. Just because of he didn't have to say anything. Randy is one of those rare guys that wouldn't have to say a word, but God, I hate that guy. I hate that guy. And kicking Stephanie in the head. And doing all that stuff.
Think about the build up to WrestleMania 25.
Yeah, he didn't have to do a damn thing, but you wanted that son of a bitch, in a wheelchair. He was just so good at it. That it's just hard not to put him there. I know you mentioned The Miz, and I agree, but number three, oh man, that's hard. I think I have to go right now and go MJF. It is so hard to not look at that guy and go, I don't believe it. You believe everything he says. The William Regal promo put him over the top for me. And him getting so emotional about it, and I said that to you, and I said, this is one of the best promos I've ever seen in my life. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but, going back to him being in WWE, and him being so angry towards William Regal about, William Regal basically saying, fuck off, you're a kid, you don't deserve it. But William Regal did such a good job of countering that and just saying, well, look where you are now. Thank me later. In the times later. So there's just so many different aspects of it that went so well. So I think my three are Triple H, Randy Orton, MJF, and we limited it to three. But like I said, Kevin Owens is towards that top three.
Yeah.
Like you said, The Rock, towards the top three. If we're just going off natural heat, it's hard to beat, John Cena's reaction. Like him or hate him, that's natural heat.
And even the heat that he was getting when he first came in too. I mean, people really didn't like him at first.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle's another just really good, annoying bastard.
I think if you can get people to hate you, it's easier to get people to love you. And I don't know,
right.
And I don't know if that's just wrestling and us crazy wrestling fans, but you think of every almost great, wrestler, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, he had his time of kind of getting heat, especially kind of in ECW, the things that he did. But just great talents. Roman Reigns, his heel status has ascended him to another level. It took John Cena to be a heel to be a great face. I think there's a lot of that goes into Kurt Angle we mentioned. Going in, that just goes in Triple H again, but that just goes into making an even better face. When you turn that corner, people love that.
Yeah, they do. And like you said, I mean, it's some of the best heels, like you said, are some of the best baby faces of all time. Yeah. I mean, Randy Orton, even when he's a heel, gets the best baby face pop of all time.
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't matter where he's at.
Look at Hogan.
What's that?
Hogan, going from
Hogan?
the most over baby face that maybe we've ever seen to, one of the biggest heels we've ever seen, Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
Right, and in the overall, WrestleMania turn from The Rock and Hogan.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the biggest moments of all time.
Yeah.
Again, I think those are my top three, but we can list off some of, I guess, honorable mentions you could say. I know I mentioned Stephanie McMahon. I know you mentioned Kurt Angle. Another one that's super, super close is JBL.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And that's probably 3B. I mean, the whole wrestling god, chasing immigrants across the border. I mean, it's very, very tough to, one, not super hate that guy, and two, hate the fact that he loves that you hate him. I mean, he loves it. I mean,
and the fact that was Bradshaw, the APA. What the hell happened to Bradshaw?
I'm trying to think, another guy, I don't know. I don't want to, well, yeah, I'm going to mention our hometown guy, Baron Corbin. I think he is good at it, especially when he was the GM for a short time. He was pretty annoying doing that. And he was good at getting some heat, that wasn't, go away heat. I think people just were tired of, they wanted to see him get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
I think he was good at that. A guy I'm not mentioning, and you haven't mentioned, is Chris Jericho. And we talked about Chris Jericho earlier. I feel like a lot of his stuff is just kind of over the top, gimmicky, cheap. And I know Mick Foley has some of that, cheaper heat and stuff like that. But that's promos. That's not. I would say that's promos, not heel. I was gonna say you can add Mick Foley to that list, but I was gonna say overall grasping promos, Mick Foley's like number 2. But just cheap heat. I don't know how you feel about that. I mentioned that in the chat we were talking about earlier. I feel like Chris Jericho is just such a cheap heat guy, especially now in AEW.
Yeah.
But, I just always have felt like it was never really, oh, curse that Chris Jericho. The only time I felt that way is when he got in the suit and said 5 words. That was the only time I really felt like, you hated Chris Jericho. But other than that,
That was
just
good,
kind of
yeah.
like, kind of just being annoying.
It may just be kind of nostalgic to me, but I liked his heel work in WCW. With man, what was that dude's name? Ralphus, I think. Something like that. The dude that wore his shirt that was too small for him. He was with that dude.
Yeah,
That was an interesting, goofy time in WCW. I feel with Chris Jericho. But again, kind of cheap heat, like you're saying. I mean, you're kind of right. He was always that over the top. He was just that. I just felt like he was just that dude that you just wanted to smack because, every time he would pin somebody with the 1 foot and flex and yell, "Come on, baby!" You're like, "Oh, all right, man. Somebody slapped this dude." But one guy that neither one of us have mentioned. Oh, well, go ahead with what you're gonna say first.
Which, I mean, I would call that, cheap and just annoying. But anyway, I jumped in there.
Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's. I feel like that one's so obvious you kind of overlook it, but I mean, in his time, great. Great guy to get some real heat, and I got to give a shout out to my dude Jim Cornette. I haven't listened to his podcast in a while, but I really enjoy that dude's podcast. But that dude is great at getting heat as well. Great promo.
We're the guy that we're just not mentioning, and I feel ashamed for not mentioning him now, is Paul Heyman.
Oh man, absolutely. Well, and to go with that, Brock Lesnar.
No, true, yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily put him in a promo style heat guy. He's just kind of that physical Randy Orton type. But Randy Orton was also good at making you hate him because of what he was saying.
Well, and with Brock, I think it's just especially the second go around. I don't give a fuck. I've already made enough money. I'm here to make some more money and go home. Take your belt and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna keep it off TV because I feel like that killed a lot of wrestling fans for a while, which I enjoyed it. With I mean, there's that argument to make. You want your belt to be on your show, but at the same time, just with the weight that Brock carries to hold that belt and then not even see the belt on TV. Brock shows up when Brock wants to, kind of heat because he like you said, yeah, he's not necessarily the greatest mouthpiece ever, but he is good at getting emotion out of you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I remember we talked about that when that was happening, when he would just take the belt and go home for 2 months and you wouldn't see it. I wasn't a big fan of that. I hated that idea, but I get it. It definitely makes you dislike him more, but it's interesting now because now they're letting him talk more.
Yeah.
He and something that I liked, which we have never really seen with Brock Lesnar, especially in any era, is Bobby Lashley just beat the brakes off Brock Lesnar. And they're kind of pushing that Bobby Lashley, which makes sense because they're both, former, MMA guys. Bobby Lashley had a really good career in Strikeforce. I mean, it makes sense that if anyone is going to beat, the hell out of Brock Lesnar, it's Bobby Lashley.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of built towards for some time just because, especially, the run Bobby Lashley had an impact. Obviously, hardcore wrestling fans know about all of that. And, what was it, the Bully Beatdown Club? Is that what their whole gimmick was? Because he was with MVP before.
Yeah.
With all that. And, that run was great. It's almost kind of Roman Reigns-esque in the Bloodline type of deal, because I mean they just ran roughshod through Impact for a while. I know there was some real down years for Impact, but what Bobby Lashley did through that time and really did kind of carry that company through a lot of dark days.
Well, yeah, I mean Bobby Lashley was Impact Wrestling, and that was I think what kind of brought him or saved him from coming back to the WWE was his big run on Impact. Either Vince McMahon wants to admit it or not. I mean, seeing a guy like Bobby Lashley carry a wrestling company that was kind of in the toilet at that point,
Yeah.
you know, it definitely makes you feel good, to bring a guy like that back. And I definitely think he deserves whatever he's getting now. You gave him the United States title, you went against, Seth Rollins, you lost Seth Rollins, but you go into Crown Jewel, you quite, you toss Brock Lesnar around pretty much the whole match.
Mm-hmm.
Brock Lesnar just gets lucky on you, and then you put him in the full Nelson, at the end of the match, or whatever, the Hurt Lock. That's what he calls it. I think that shows a lot of what they feel about Bobby Lashley. Is he is the equivalent to Brock Lesnar, and maybe at times better than Brock Lesnar.
Lashley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would assume so.
Well, and I like that they're finally kind of starting to present him as a main event level guy, because I feel like WWE hasn't really pushed him as such quite yet since he's been back. And I mean, he's been back for a while now. I feel it's been a couple of years, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe even 3 at this point. But they didn't really push him until they put him back with MVP.
Yeah.
And then he got the WWE title, and he had that medium run and went into WrestleMania. So he's had some runs, but I think this could be his best run. On his
Agreed.
return, you put him against Brock, and you kind of build him up as this unmovable object. So I think there's a lot of things to be, if you're a Bobby Lashley fan, and there's a lot to be looking forward to for him in the future. One of the things that I feel like is being left out, and I don't think it should, but a lot of things that are being left out is just the overall well doneness of how well WWE has been doing Bianca Belair. Because, as you know, I've never been that big of a fan of Bianca Belair, but I feel like they have taken her to a different kind of level and made her a big star. Now, that Bayley match at Crown Jewel wasn't it. I feel like there's a lot of issues with that match, a lot of different botches and things like that. But how do you feel? I know you've been a bigger fan of her than I have, but how do you feel they're doing with Bianca Belair and maybe just the women's division in general without Charlotte Flair and really without Becky Lynch?
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed it, and I enjoy this rivalry she's got going with Bayley. My only question, I guess, really was thinking, with Bayley coming back off of her injury, is I just would have expected them to put the belt on her a little quicker than especially seeing Damage Control with kind of collecting gold, because they just had. Oh man, now I can't think of her name. Nikki Cross winning the 24/7 belt on Monday Night Raw. I mean, maybe they're gonna continuously build to that, but I didn't watch the Bianca Belair match and Bayley match yet. I honestly just kind of skimmed over the Logan Paul and Roman Reigns match kind of while we were before we were recording, but. I mean, I think both of those women have a lot to offer, and obviously Bayley went on that amazing run that she had, and what was that? That's been over a year ago now.
I believe so. Yeah, because I mean, she had that heel turn a couple of years ago.
She's a great heel too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she had the heel turn a couple of years ago, and then she went on that run. She went on SmackDown, and won the championship. Yeah, she's done a lot of really good things. And I always felt this way, that I felt she was the better out of the two between Bayley and Banks. Not that Sasha Banks is as talented she is, but I've always felt that way. I felt like Bayley was the person that they should have been pushing all along, and I think they made the right call with that. Will Sasha Banks return? Apparently, she's supposed to but who knows? And secondly, who knows how long that's going to be? I feel like she's kind of a light switch with her attitude towards WWE, and maybe just wrestling in general. But I don't think she's really all in on being on TV, or being in WWE unless she has these big runs as a champion or a contender. But with all the talent they have now, she's just kind of gotta wait for her time, and
Well,
I don't think she's ready to do that.
just with Sasha Banks, I think the main thing with her that is tough, because I mean I agree with you 110%. All the talent that they have, and they need to let, especially with what Liv Morgan has done recently, and kind of elevating some of these women to the top of the card. The thing that sucks to me for Sasha Banks is I don't feel like she's really had a true run. They've kind of given her the belt here and there, but she's never been one that they kind of gave the belt to and let her do her thing, or gave her much time with. I know the tag titles originally when her and Bailey lost them. Yeah, her and Bailey lost them, and she was upset about that, and they ended up regaining them, and they did their whole program together, and then they moved on to her and Naomi. But from what I've seen, she's also exploring other opportunities beyond wrestling, and I think modeling and things like that. But so that goes back to the question: yeah, is she all in? I don't know. I mean, I think that she's kind of in a place where a lot of wrestlers get sometimes where they just kind of fall out of love with wrestling for a little while, and maybe she'll venture back, maybe she won't, maybe she'll move on, and she won't be back. But what they've got right now is amazing. And like you said with Bailey, I didn't see it with Bailey until this heel run. When she went on her heel run, I mean, I totally get it. She's a very talented woman, and can definitely carry the belt a long way and carry a brand. Like we're talking about, if we they split between Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. But what else was I gonna say? Just with Bailey, I think that I think waiting on it isn't terrible. Just like I said, I was kind of surprised that she didn't win almost initially. Maybe I was thinking just because when Becky Lynch came back, I mean, it was immediate. She won the belt, which is also then kind of a good bit of respect to Bianca Belair. Let her hold on to the belt and let her see how far she can take this run after it kind of got cut short last time by Becky Lynch. And I don't know. We'll see where the chips fall from here. But who's Bianca Belair teaming up with?
Well, right now she's in that weird trio with Alexa and Asuka.
Okay, yeah.
Who knows how long that's going to last, or what they're actually doing with that. Probably not a lot.
I mean, they may be getting ready for Survivor Series, setting something up for that.
And I think that's what they're aiming towards, because it's going to be War Games, and I'm sure the all four or 3 or 4 or whatever will battle in a War Game. And obviously if Nikki Cross is involved, they'll bring a 4th woman in to do that, and who knows who that will be. Will it be Sasha coming back? Will it be a new talent? There's a lot of different options they can do there.
How about the fact that Emma came back?
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, that's again, as we talked at the top of the show, that just goes to show, the respect of Triple H, or Paul Levesque. He brought back someone who I think was not interested in coming back at all to WWE, but as time goes on, he brought her back. Interesting thought. I thought about this the other day, and I know we're getting close to the end here, but I was thinking about this the other day. Obviously, Paige is in AEW, right, and I don't know if you saw her promo against Britt Baker, but it was very, very good. Britt Baker was saying that she built AEW by herself, the women's division, and the whole company as in general. She basically told Paige, "You have no idea what it's like, blah, 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 blah." And Paige came back and she said, "I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I was wrestling indie shows for 13 of those 20 years. She said, I wrestled around Europe for free. She said, I battled my drug addiction publicly, on TV, and my tragic life publicly on TV. She said, I have no idea what it's like. She said, Britt, you have no idea what it's like, to be me. And, if we're talking about who the veteran is, you're the rookie and I'm the veteran. If anyone's anything to prove, it's you, and it was just well delivered. It almost made me feel, a bit bummed that Triple H didn't want to give her another chance. But I get it because they gave her so many chances.
Yeah.
At some point, you just got to be like, I can't, and I get it. But how do you feel about her? One, obviously, I think she's one of the better talents in women wrestling, period. But how do you feel about her? Missing the WWE bus, maybe because of a lot of the mistakes that she made, um, personally, and Triple H is a very, giving second, third chances. I mean, hell, he gave Randy Orton about 15. So obviously him giving people chances isn't an issue, but at some point, I think he just decided enough was enough. And I think that kind of hurt her chances of ever coming back, because I heard she did want to come back, but I think it was just too much of giving her so many chances.
Well, and I think that it's also maybe time, give it time, because like we said earlier, never say never. We talked about Ultimate Warrior and Bret Hart earlier and the possibility of CM Punk coming back at some point. But, with Paige, I think that door is open. I just don't think it's open right now, kind of deal, where, like you said, at some point you got to say enough is enough. And I think in a moment like this with the, person like Paige, is kind of go out there and show me you still want this and you still want to be a part of a wrestling organization, and try to put together your best effort, which I thought I haven't seen much of her stuff. I saw her come back. I haven't seen this promo you're talking about. I'm gonna go look it up after we get done recording, just because it sounds like it's pretty good. But is she wrestling, or has she wrestled? I thought she had a neck injury that was preventing her
Well,
from.
they officially cleared her
Okay.
to compete, and that was a part of the promo. But she ended up doing a finisher on Britt Baker. So,
Okay.
The question of if she's cleared or not, I guess, has been answered. But,
Good.
to the extent of if she's limited, I guess we'll find out. But apparently the plan is to have her wrestle, a match a month and then slowly feed her into a mainstream. But she's kind of a, the Bryan Danielson WWE,
Right.
one match at a time phase.
And I wonder if that plays a part into it as well, of her not getting back into WWE's good graces immediately. What can they really do with her, type of thing. We've seen her on TV as an authority figure.
Right. I mean, well, that's true. And as we're saying, WWE isn't short on talent.
Right.
Especially in the women's division. So, it's tough, but I think she's in the right spot.
Agreed.
And I think she will get some leadership from former WWE guys and a couple of AEW guys and women. But I think she's in the best spot for her, so she can kind of be that leader of the women's locker room, have that veteran-esque, aura to her, but still be young. I mean, she's not all that old at all. So I think that'll help AEW in a women division that's kind of lacking. You have Jade Cargill, you have Britt Baker, and you have Nyla Rose. Outside of that, you don't really have a lot.
Yeah.
So, I think that adds a huge boost to them. So, who knows? But I think it's good to see her back. Obviously we'll wrap it up here, but final thoughts on War Games. How do you feel that's going to go, with WWE? WWE came out the other day and said, we're going to try to limit the overall showing of War Game clips from NXT, just because a lot of those guys aren't even there anymore. One,
Yeah.
Two, they want to push this as a every year thing. So how do you think that's going to work with War Games becoming pretty much an every year event?
I am ecstatic. I'm very excited. Again, this is the third time now I'm mentioning, I'm sure, throughout our podcast library here on Wrestling with Kayfabe. I've mentioned a few times that I was a WCW kid growing up. So seeing the War Games being executed is awesome to me. It's exciting. I think it goes kind of show the relationship that Triple H had with Dusty Rhodes as well, because Dusty Rhodes is the inventor of this match, and just the respect, to show towards Dusty, and getting this match that's so unique and such an interesting match. So many different things you can do, so many different stories you can tell within a War Games match, and that has been told over time. NWO versus WCW was in a War Games match. The Four Horsemen having War Games matches. I'm trying to think. I think that was the one that it was the Four Horsemen, and the guys from WCW came out all camoed out, dressed in camo. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage and Sting. And so anyways, just to go back to modern day of just seeing it, I'm excited to see what they're gonna do. I'm assuming they're not gonna have a roof on it still, which I kind of wish that they did, but seeing what they did in NXT with the cage without a roof, I think is also fascinating. And then, okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in NXT, did they have 2 rings the whole night when they did War Games, or did they just set that up for the War Games match?
I don't know.
Okay. Because that was one of my favorite parts, too, is having those wonky matches.
I think they did.
Yeah.
Because, how, one, do you get another ring in there?
Right.
Keep the show paced.
That quick.
Two, and it would just, to me, it would have been too difficult. So
yeah.
I would assume that we will see multiple rings all night.
So that, to me, just adds to it, because it makes the whole night feel interesting and weird. Mm-hmm. I almost think that they did, but they avoided using it at all, because I almost feel like I remember them, like, I don't know, something weird, but I feel like they didn't use the other ring at all in any of the other matches, which that was part of the allure to me, because it's like you've got this weird setup all night where you're not used to seeing it, and it's one night out of the year, and I don't think that, I don't know, people argue, wrestling fans argue whether, these gimmick pay-per-views, which, Survivor Series, adding War Games to it, I think is good, and already it was this time of year. I don't 100% remember. I want to say maybe August was Fall Brawl, because that's when WCW usually set up War Games, was Fall Brawl, and but again, a fall event in November. I guess here in Kansas City, more of a winter event. Depends on what year it is, but just having that, and World War III. When they did their Battle Royal in WCW, the 60 men, or was it 60 or something like that, between 3 rings, and having the 3 rings, I'll never forget. I think it was Ultimo Dragon and Chris Jericho that had this crazy ass match. It may have been Rey Mysterio, but either way, nonetheless, had this crazy ass match where they used all 3 rings and maneuvered around it. And the Fall Brawl pay-per-views back in the day, I can remember, it's just weird. You have a regular singles match, but there's 2 rings, but I think that adds to the whole, the night, the whole evening, just as much as WrestleMania adds to it with the crowd and the setup and it being in a huge stadium, or Crown Jewel that we just saw that just looks different. And to me, as a wrestling fan, I think most of us can agree that the more different that it's perceived to us, the more special, maybe. I don't know exactly if that's the word to use. But unique is a good way to describe it. It's just the uniqueness of it that, I think that we all enjoy as wrestling fans, that we don't get to see as much in 2022, because everything's very uniform. Even the premium live events and pay-per-views and, when we were growing up, we watched SmackDown with a fist coming out of the, punching through glass, and Raw was
Yeah.
set up extremely different. There was
Mm-hmm.
a big difference between the two shows. Nowadays, I mean, what's the difference? Slap blue, slap red on top of it, or
Right.
Road Wild is another one that I'll always remember, being a vibrant pay-per-view. They're at Sturgis. They got bikers everywhere. The entrance ramp was a road leading to the ring. And, we just don't get that as much. So, hopefully to see those two rings all night and see how these guys get creative with it, It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's definitely some creative minds that are in the WWE right now. So,
Absolutely.
there's going to be a lot of different things that we're going to see. So, overall, a lot of different stuff to be excited for, a lot of different things
Yes,
to move
sir.
on to. I know we kind of talked about what we're going to be, recording here in the future, but just kind of talk about it here a little bit. And then, I know we're going to do some different pay-per-view reviews like we have in the past. And we have different things along with, I don't think we're going to get to tonight because we've been rambling on and on.
Right.
But different video games that we've enjoyed over the years. So we'll talk about that a little bit next time, or whenever we get a chance, and a lot of different stuff. And hopefully by then, more games have started. We'll kind of see what that brings, and more of the Bray Wyatt character. But overall, a lot of different stuff here. What are some final thoughts for you? How do you feel? War game. Well, I shouldn't say that. We'll end on a thought. Does Roman Reigns, and you don't have to answer this tonight, but does Roman Reigns continue through WrestleMania with the championship?
I like that. Let's end on a make you think. Let us know in the comments what you
As I
think.
say, make you think, let us know. And like I said, be sure to follow the blog too. Papa Schro has his blog and has a lot of different stuff. No, he's in wrestling, but he makes a lot of different shirts and stuff like that. And all your favorite, t-shirts and all that good stuff, along with blogs about different information, along about our Kansas City Chiefs and all that good stuff as well. But from DEJ and Papa Schro, Wrestling with Kayfabe, we'll catch you on the flip side. And remember, does Roman Reigns keep his championship at WrestleMania?